Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome to another Cook Along Live. This week, we're going to be going a little bit easy, a little bit laid back. We're going to be making a homemade blue cheese dressing, a wedge salad, and I'm also going to be doing a little bit of a steak. So if you guys are doing any kind of a protein, steak, chicken, anything like that, go ahead and we're going to preheat our oven. Let's get that started. We're actually going to get it up to about 425 for our protein. So go ahead and get that set and going. Hopefully everybody's had a fantastic week. My week has been wonderful. I can't complain at all. Without further ado, I guess let's get started. I don't really have anything else to add. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to get started with some of the topping to our salad. I want to take some bacon and get it crispy, so I have some bacon bits to put on top. So what we're going to do is hopefully you have your one slice of bacon. We're really just going to chop it up, put it into a cold pan, and we're going to very slowly heat it up. Now what I like to do is actually cut it the long ways first. I'm basically going to cut this into about 1/4 inch strips, kind of like so. There, so you guys can see what's going on. Just get this cut up into 1/4 inch strips. Doesn't have to be perfect. These are going to be just a topping for our wedge salad. I'll take these strips, make sure they're all separated, and we're going to lay them crosswise, like so. And we're just going to dice them up. Again, basically just want to kind of keep them about 1/4 inch cubes. Try and get these about the same size, or as close as you can. It'll just help them all to kind of crisp up and brown evenly. Otherwise, some might be pretty well done and some might be fairly undercooked. So go ahead and get all of that ready. We'll just go ahead and sprinkle them into our cold pan. And now I can do this. You guys should be able to see the little picture-in-picture there with the actual cookware now. So I'm going to get this going medium-low heat. So about on my induction stove it says 275. That's about medium-low. I'm going to take a spatula and just kind of spread them out into one layer if I can, as opposed to one layer as I can. Now I'm not going to add anything else to the pan. I just want this to kind of sit there and very slowly start rendering out. It'll also start browning the bacon. And then once I'm really ready for it to kind of crisp up, I can turn up the heat and get that going. So while we're waiting on that to kind of start sizzling away, I'm going to go ahead and start building my dressing. Dressing is actually pretty easy. It's a mixture of sour cream, a little bit of mayonnaise, some buttermilk, and we add a couple of other things. That's kind of our base. And then on top of the base, we start layering our flavor. Absolutely stew. I agree with you 100%. So what we want to do here, we want a 1/2 cup of sour cream. I use a smaller spoon to scoop into my measuring cup. And then I just kind of level it off. Now you might be thinking, why on earth would you want to build your own blue cheese dressing? You can buy it at the store. It's pretty okay if you get it from the store. There's a couple of reasons. You ever gotten some of that? I mean, for one, I love blue cheese. It's one of my favorite dressings. Sometimes I'll get the blue cheese that's got the really, really big chunks of blue cheese in it. I like to get that blue cheese flavor. I like a lot of blue cheese crumbles in my blue cheese dressing. Problem is, those are usually much thicker, right? They don't pour very well. Well, with this, you can actually go in and change the viscosity just by adding a little bit more buttermilk, for example, or maybe adding a little bit of tap water or a little bit extra vinegar. If you don't want any kind of if you don't want any flavor, the water is going to be the best. But if you want a little bit more tang, the buttermilk will be great, and you can really kind of build your own dressing, as it were. Let's see, I'll go ahead and just get the rest of that off of my spoon. And off of my finger. The other is you can control what kind of blue cheese you're actually adding to your dressing. So if there's a blue cheese that you really, really like and you want to make a dressing out of it, you can absolutely do that. So you really have a lot more control over the flavor profile, the viscosity, a lot of other things. If I'm putting together a blue cheese dressing for like a wing night, I might make it a little bit thicker because I want it to actually stick to the veggies or the wings or, you know, whatever it is that I'm building the blue cheese for. We got this guy's over here sputtering a little bit. I'm just going to give them a nice little stir. And they're starting to brown, so that's great. Just keep an eye on it as we continue to build our dressing. So we got a half a cup of sour cream. We're going to put in a half a cup of mayonnaise. Like so. Get some of that mayonnaise off of our little shredder. Now, the other thing that we're going to add is a little bit of buttermilk. I basically want like a third cup of buttermilk. A pretty good approximation of that is to take my half cup measure here, fill it up about 3/4 of the way, and that's pretty good for the buttermilk on this. If you're doubling this recipe and you're using like a cup of each, you would just essentially use 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. So like that. And that's essentially our base for our cream sauce. If you want, you can get in here and start scraping off some of the extra and just making sure you get everything into the bowl with a spatula, for example. Since I just happen to have one right here, I'll go ahead and do that. There we are. Set that all over to the side. Bacon bits are looking pretty good over here. Not quite as brown as I'd like. I'm going to let them go for a little bit longer. I like to get them a little bit more crispy. While I focus here on just kind of mixing this together. Just roughly, I guess. Go ahead and wipe off some of the sour cream from my spatula. And I can continue to use that for my bacon. All right. So we've got our cream dressing kind of the base set up. Next steps, I'm basically going to add some flavoring, add some seasoning. I'm going to put in a 1/4 teaspoon of some ground mustard. You can get hot, you can get regular. I like it a little bit tangy, so I usually go for the hot mustard. English mustard is great if you like a little bit of that wasabi kick. There we go. We're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We're going to approximate a 1/4 teaspoon of freshly ground pepper. I like to make my peppercorns or my size of my ground bits like a medium grind. Don't want it too coarse, don't want it too fine. Stir the bacon around, just make sure it's not burning. Looks pretty good. I'll let it go a little bit longer. And we're going to put in a 1/4 teaspoon of sugar. Now there's a bunch of other stuff you can put in here. If you want, you can add a little bit of dill. That'll give you almost a little bit of a ranch dressing kind of vibe for your blue cheese. So if you really, really like ranch, really, really like blue cheese, and want kind of a combination of both, that's a great option. You can also add crushed garlic if you like a little bit of that flavor, a little bit of vinegar if you want some more tang. Again, if this looks a little bit too thick for you, if you're trying to make like an actual pourable dressing or something with a little bit more viscosity, you can add a little bit of water. So all of that will work. Now I'm going to switch to a whisk instead of my trusty spoon. It'll just allow me to incorporate these ingredients a little bit more thoroughly. Keep an eye over there on my bacon. Just give it a quick glance. There we go. So you guys are noticing probably that the blue cheese, or the cream dressing, I should say, is a little bit thick. This isn't going to be pouring very easily, which is fine, But if you want to do something that's a little bit thinner, by all means, again, drizzle a little bit of extra liquid. You can also add a little bit of Worcestershire sauce if you'd like. It'll add a little bit of that kind of steaky flavor to this. And if you really want, you can also drizzle in a little bit of balsamic vinegar. We're actually going to put that on hold because I'm going to be doing a balsamic reduction where we have kind of like a balsamic syrup that we can then drizzle over our salad to complement it without actually forcing that flavor into the dressing, if that makes sense. That way we have a little bit more control over how much of that we want to add to our salad, or if we're using this for, again, wings or carrot sticks or something like that, we're not forcing that flavor into the dressing. We've got our cream base built. Now, grab your little brick of blue cheese. Pro tip, I know I didn't put this in the instructions or the ingredients pre-show, but if you want this to be nice and very easy to kind of crumble up or grate, stick it in the freezer for at least an hour before you actually put it into your dressing. It'll make it a nice hard kind of block of cheese that will shred very easily. I didn't do that, it just came out of the fridge, but pro tip. I got just a little hand grater here. I'm gonna go ahead and grate some of my blue cheese through this. You'll notice it's kind of chunking up. Again, if it was frozen, this would shred quite a bit nicer. But that's okay, because I like chunky blue cheese. I'm gonna grind up about, I don't know, a quarter of my blue cheese. We're gonna go ahead and use our whisk to incorporate those chunks. And then we're going to do another round. You basically just want to go like a quarter of this block at a time. And you want to put about 3/4 of it into your dressing. If you don't like that much blue cheese in your blue cheese dressing, don't use that much. It's as simple as that. You're controlling how much of the actual cheese crumbles you have, which is also going to affect the amount of flavor that you get out of this. Take a quick glance at my bacon. Looks pretty good. Switch back over to that. Oops. So our bacon looks pretty good. Nice and crispy. Don't have any blackened bits yet, which is good. And this is kind of the benefit of doing it at a low, medium-low heat. You can kind of control, you have a little bit more leeway, I should say, over how crispy they're going to get. I'm going to take these just a little bit further. So I think I'm just going to leave them in there for a bit, give them a little stir. And then we'll just kind of keep those guys going while we move forward with our blue cheese dressing. I'm going to go ahead and stir in the blue cheese again. You'll notice the dressing is starting to look really chunky, which is what I like. And now I'll go ahead and put in the last of our cheese crumbles. And I'm going to leave a little bit of the blue cheese block behind so that I can top my salad with some freshly grated blue cheese. Try and get as much off of the grater as we can. Clean off our hands. And we'll get that all mixed in. Quick glance over at our bacon bits. And they're looking pretty much done. Our dressing is done. Go ahead and give this a taste. And adjust it for salt if you need any. Tastes like blue cheese to me. Yum, yum. This is one of my all-time favorite dressings. I love blue cheese. I'm gonna go ahead and set the dressing aside. And we're going to go ahead and spoon out our bacon. Now what I'm going to do with the bacon here, I'm just going to remove it to a tray. And I'm not going to pour out the oil. I'm going to scoop this all off to one side like so. And I'm going to kind of spoon it out over these paper towels to drain and cool. Now what I'm going to do, since we've already got a bunch of bacon fat in the pan, I'm going to use that to kind of sear my steak. Now whatever protein you're using, you can absolutely use the bacon grease to sear it as well. If you're going for vegetarian or vegan, obviously I would imagine you're not using bacon for your salad. So in that case, use avocado oil or any kind of a nice high heat oil for whatever your protein is, whether it's a portobello mushroom, some Beyond Beef or something like that, whatever it is that you are cooking, if anything, for your side. And I'm going to go ahead and just set those up above the cutting board for now to drain and cool. Go ahead and wipe off the excess blue cheese from our cutting board. And we're going to focus just for a second here on our steak. So we're going to get this up to a high heat. If you're looking at my induction stove, it's set to 425. And I want to get it up pretty warm. I've got a nice piece of New York steak here. And what I want to do is grab a paper towel or two. Go ahead and just dry off the surfaces. If you've watched the steak cook along, we actually gave you a couple of pro tips on how to really prepare a steak for cooking. I did not do that this time because it doesn't really matter. It's really just kind of up to how much pre-planning you want to do and kind of what you really want to get accomplished with the steak. But you can season this up to, you could season it up to a day in advance. I usually do an hour or 2 hours ahead. That way the salt kind of has a little bit of time to absorb into the steak. In this case, I didn't do it, but that's fine. Not going to really affect the flavor all that much. The saltiness will just be more on the surface than throughout, which is, again, okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to go ahead and drop some salt on this bad boy. Get a good seasoning. If we switch over, you'll notice my pan is smoking. I'm going to drop the heat down to medium now. Hey Christina, that's just an accompaniment for the salad. I usually have a ton of bacon left over, so I'm just kind of trying to moderate a bit. You're welcome to use as much bacon as you would like for your own salad, though. Now, I'm not going to add any pepper to this steak yet. I'm actually going to sear it first, and then when I flip it, I'll pepper it. That way I'm not burning the peppercorns on the surface of the steak when they hit this ripping hot pan. Go back up to high since the smoke kind of went down a little bit. And we got our steak seasoned, got our pan hot. We're going to lay the steak away from us. Always lay away from you. So we're just going to go like this. That way, if you do drop the steak, you'll splash oil away from you, not into your lap. And then what I like to do is grab a towel and just kind of give this a nice press into the pan just to make sure that the whole thing is contacting. If you have a sandwich press or even a plate, you can set it on top as well. That'll just make sure that the steak stays in contact with the cooking surface. So we'll let that go for about a minute on this side or 2 minutes on this side. We'll flip it. We'll do 2 minutes on the other side. We'll pepper it, and then we'll throw it into our oven. And just anytime you move it, make sure you press it back down into the pan to make sure that you get good contact with the side that's being seared so that you get that nice browning. This goes with any protein. If you're doing like a cauliflower steak or if you're doing like a portobello mushroom steak, absolutely make sure that the surface of whatever it is that you're cooking is in complete contact with the cooking surface. So you get that nice golden brown sear on that side. I'm gonna keep this on high for just about half of my cooking time. I'm gonna drop it down to medium high now, that way I don't burn the oil and burn the steak, like blacken the steak. That never makes it taste any better. And now what I'll do is we'll go ahead and just kind of take a peek underneath and see what it looks like. It looks pretty good. Go ahead and flip it. And then on this, again, best you can, try and keep this side of the steak in contact with the pan. Now at this point, really, I'm just going to pepper it and put it in the oven. The oven's preheated to 425. And then it'll just go in the oven for about 7 minutes. And then that'll just make sure that the whole thing is cooked medium rare or medium all the way through, depending on what you like. Into the oven we go. Wonderful. Steak is cooking. Time to move on to our salad. So the salad is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, although the first thing we're going to do is actually set our plate down. Switch over here and switch over like so. We're actually going to put our plate down first, and we're going to put a nice dollop of blue cheese down on the plate. And the reason that we're doing this is with a wedge salad, oftentimes people put all the dressing up on top, and unfortunately that doesn't really get to the entire piece of lettuce, the entire wedge. So putting a little bit down on the bottom gives you a little bit more well-rounded coverage. I like to lay it on a little bit thick. There we go. Now, before we continue, since I remembered, let me grab my pot. Where is it? Of course, it's in the sink and dirty, so let me give this a quick rinse. Sorry, no sink cam today. We'll go ahead and get our balsamic reduction going. That way it's ready once the salad is ready. Hey Siri, set a timer for 5 minutes.
5 minutes, counting down.
Get that timer going for our steak. I said 7, it's been about 2, so just do a little bit of a smaller timer. Just make sure that this little saucepan is clean, clean, clean. Especially when you're doing a reduction of any kind, if your pan has anything in it, any kind of residue, that flavor will be cooked into whatever it is that you're reducing. Especially for like a balsamic glaze, you don't want anything else in there. Dry it off. There we are. So for our balsamic glaze, we're basically just going to put in a cup of balsamic vinegar or so. You can eyeball it, really. And we're just going to cook it down by about half. It's going to get really syrupy and yummy. And now we can continue with our salad. So, I got a nice head of iceberg lettuce. This is traditional for a wedge salad. Of course, you can use romaine if you want. It's not really a wedge unless you cut it into little wedges. Might be a little bit weird, but really, you do you. Whatever it is that you want to turn into a wedge, go for it. I'm going to try and find a nice even side. You'll notice that this one's a little bit oblong. So I'll probably cut it this way first, right along that leaf. I'll set this half over on the side. Then I'll try and figure out how I want to cut this to get a really nice little wedge. And let's turn down our balsamic vinegar, which started bubbling away. We want it to just kind of simmer. We don't want it to boil. But you do want it to be reducing. I'm going to play with the temperature here just until it starts getting to a good little boil here. Good little simmer here, excuse me. And then we got a little couple of bubbles breaking the surface. That might be a bit aggressive. And try and dial in that simmer so that we don't have to pay attention to it. We can just kind of let it go. Perfect. I'll leave it right there. All right, so for my excuse me, for my wedge here, I'm basically going to go and cut almost on a diagonal here so that I have a nice equal-sized pair of wedges. We got one right here, we got one over here. I'm going to use this one just because it looks a little bit nicer. I'm going to go ahead and just trim off that little heel bit. And now we have an option. I like to see how this wedge lays. This actually lays pretty well. Sometimes they try and flop over. Sometimes there isn't a really good surface presented when you lay it down. This one actually lays down pretty well, like this. So I'm going to put it up this way. If your wedge does not like stabilize on its back like this, you can always put it on its side like so. And then that'll just give you a nice stable salad. Since this is actually going to lay down pretty well, I'm just going to leave it like this. That way I can put condiments and things in the middle here, and then the dressing will go into all the nooks and crannies, and we still have a little bit of extra blue cheese on the outside. This extra wedge, if you have a second person eating with you, you can absolutely serve them up a nice little salad as well. I do not tonight, so it's just me. Next stop, I'm going to go ahead and cut up some tomatoes. Got our balsamic boiling a little bit aggressively, so I'm going to turn down the heat. Hey Siri, stop the timer. That's perfect. We'll grab our steak out from the oven. And we'll set it off to the side to rest. So I'm going to set it over there. Let it rest. We'll move it over when we're done with our salad. Now, tomatoes, I'm going to cut them in half, but diagonally, because it just makes them a little bit more interesting. Like so. And then I'm going to try and find little spots to put them, both in the actual head of romaine, as well as kind of dotted around the plate, or dotted around some of the leaves that might have folded down like this one did on the outside. We really just kind of want to play around with our presentation. Remember, the better it looks, the tastier it is. So try and make it look kind of fun. There we go. And these will just go in the taster. Chuck our balsamic, thickening up nicely. Again, we'll play with the heat just a bit. Want it to be a nice simmer. This is going a little bit too hard for what I like, but not bad. We're going to go with a carrot next. Now, what you can do is absolutely cut this up into little slices if you want. Again, if you cut these kind of on an angle, you'll get nice little, almost wedge-shaped carrots, which looks pretty fun. Another trick, as I eat all of my veggies that I'm not putting on a salad, you just use a peeler and peel off little thin strips that you can then lay over your salad. Just kind of let them fall wherever they will. And if you keep rotating the carrot as you go, you'll get nice little thin strips like so. We'll just kind of play around with where they end up. And then this 100% depends on how much you like carrots or whatever else that you are putting on top. I happen to love everything that I'm putting onto my salad, so I'm probably going to go a bit overboard. I apologize for that. No, I don't. I don't apologize. It's my salad. Go away. And then we're going to do some red onion. I'm going to cut this super thin. Like, I want millimeter thin onion slices here. We're talking like super duper thin. We're just going to go ahead and lay these on top of our salad as well. Oop, that one's got a little thick side. There we go. We haven't added any dressing yet, which is how we're doing this. We're going to add all of our condiments first, all of our veggies and things. And then we'll add our dressing at the end. We'll do one more nice thin onion. There we are. And stop our balsamic. I'm going to have to add a little bit of water because it went a little bit too far. That's all good. There we go. 2 seconds while I add some water to this. We want it a syrup, not a paste. The water will help break it up and turn it back into a syrup. And there we go. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to take some of my dressing, give it a nice little stir. I actually probably want to take the dressing and thin it out just a bit for the top of my salad. I'm going to take a tablespoon or so of my dressing, a little bit more. I'm going to add a little bit more buttermilk. Not much. Maybe a tablespoon or so. Make it a little bit more pourable. And again, you can always add more if you want it to be more runny or less runny, or however you want to do it. It's your salad, you make it the way you want it. And that includes adding more bacon if you want more bacon. Now I'm just going to go ahead and take my thinner salad dressing and just kind of drizzle it over the top here. Make sure to get some falling down the flat side. And this is a lovely looking dressing, a lovely looking salad. I'm just kind of drizzling it over the edge here so that it coats all of the surfaces. And there we go. We can still see all of the, there we go. We can still see all of the lovely little veggies that we have on our salad. We can see all of the dressing. Set that aside. We need some crispy fried onions. Totally optional, but I think they add a little bit of a contrast, nice contrast to the raw onion as well. We'll just sprinkle these on top. The dressing helps to kind of adhere your crispy onions to the top of your salad. There we go. And last but certainly not least, go ahead and move our bacon bits from there Little drying towel right on top with the crispy fried onions. Check this bad boy out. This is why I used one bacon strip. Got an entire surface of bacon here. A little bit extra to kind of sprinkle around the plate. And I still have some extra left on the tray. When I did my test run for this, I had almost an entire strip of bacon left. I'll get rid of that on the tray. And then last but not least, laster but not leaster, a few large crumbles of blue cheese. This is what I like to call a wedge salad with the works, because you're basically just adding everything you like onto the salad. There we go. Now the blue cheese should keep for probably a week to 2 weeks, depending on obviously storage, but it won't last that long. If you like blue cheese, you're going to be eating this very quickly. Check that bad boy out. Get my hands out of the way and kind of center it there on the plate. We'll go to a different shot here in a second. And before we forget, let's use that balsamic reduction that we have over there. I'm just going to go ahead, grab a tablespoon, scoop it up. Now we can just kind of drizzle it. Now the reason we're using the balsamic reduction instead of just balsamic vinegar will just kind of splatter. This actually somewhat holds its shape and gives you a really nice, rich, deep, sweet contrast to your blue cheese dressing. There we go. Our salad with the works. Almost not enough room on the plate for the steak. All right. Speaking of the steak, let's go ahead and get that plate off to the side. Grab our steak out of the pan. Set it over here. We'll just cut nice thick slices. I like to take kind of the heel piece, set it upside down, and then kind of layer things around that. Pretty good. Larger piece there. Like so, for a little bit of contrast. I know you guys can't really see it on the stream because it's covered by the overlay, but give me a sec. I'll pull that down into frame. There we go. Yummy, yummy for my tummy. Let me see if I can go to this camera. Show off the delicious salad here. Wedge salad with the works and some perfectly cooked medium rare steak. Done. With our homemade dressing. I really, really hope you guys give this a try. It is fantastic. It is a absolutely delicious dressing, and being able to put this together and then have a little bit more control over how you're dressing whatever it is you're dressing. If you want it thick or thin, you can absolutely change it to match your style. just empowers you. Plus, if your favorite dressing in the store goes out, this is a great way to kind of try and reverse engineer or duplicate it so that you can always have it yourself at home. Anyway, everybody, I hope you guys had a good time watching this week's Cook Along Live. Next week, I'm thinking we're going to do pasta bolognese. I mean, I don't think that I've done that on this channel before. I'm going to go and double check my previous posts and see if I have or not. But assuming I haven't, that's what we'll do next week. With dried pasta, we're going to focus on the sauce and just use spaghetti or some other kind of like linguine or something that's a nice robust pasta for the sauce. So keep a lookout for the ingredients list on that. That's a fun one, and you can really go to town with the bolognese sauce. And cool, man. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your week. I will see you next Sunday on another wonderful Cook Along Live. Have a great one, everybody.